we'll say, well, what number would be offensive to you? What would be a number you would not take? And we'll try to get them to lowball themselves. Oh my God, if you guys were offering me 300, I would tell you to go kick rocks. So now we're like, know what they won't sell for. Okay, so it sounds like you would never sell for 300. And then we're getting them, like, it's like a psychology game. Like, we're like, okay, you'd never sell for 300. Okay, so now we know what you won't sell for. Now let's go back down the line and figure out how long has this problem been a problem for. And then let's just keep talking about motivation and how we can actually help them. And then we'll go back to the price at the end and we'll kind of peter back and forth. Like, and some of these calls could take like an hour and a half, depending on the situation.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Evergreen Marketing Podcast by Carrot.com. I'm your host, Brady Winder, and I've got, I think fourth timer back on the podcast. Fourth timer. Fourth time. Welcome back, Greg.
Track, but I think this is the fourth time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It's going to be good. So Greg Helbeck, longtime friend of Carrot and the podcast. We're going to do something different. We're going to do a two-parter here. So this episode, we're going to talk all about sales negotiation, psychology of sales negotiation. I know you guys love that stuff. I'm excited to get into the weeds on it. And then part two is going to be all about raising private money. So keep an eye out for that episode on the podcast. But yeah, man. So Greg, give me like the 30-second bio for people that haven't heard you on the podcast before. Cause I think it's been like 3 or 4 years, dude.
Yeah, it's been at least 3 years. I think maybe 21 we did the last one. Lots changed since then, maybe 22. But I've been doing this business for 10 years now. I started when I was 20. I'm almost 30 now. I started out as a wholesaler in New York and eventually started saving enough money up to where I, was buying houses and flipping them and, getting involved in rehabs and buying rentals. So our business is headquartered out of New York. That's where we do like 80% of our business. And then the other 20% is split between Delaware, where one of my teammates lives, and Seattle, where I personally live.
Nice. So you're in hard markets, man.
Hard markets, man. I feel like it's like, I see some of these guys in like these cheap areas and I'm like, you just don't get it. Like, especially New York, man, that's like it's like shark zone over there, man. Brutal.
Yeah. Just because of prices or the competition or both? Like, I know it's a hard market, but what really makes it hard? It
used to be, well, the prices have always been high and now they're even higher. So that's thing number one. Competition is there for sure. Especially like on the retail market, like when you're flipping, it's really good because there's a lot of buyers. But the biggest issue in that market is you have to deal with attorneys. So like attorney is involved every part of the deal, like seller, buyer. If you're a wholesaler, you have a lawyer. The hard money lender has a lawyer. The HOA has a lawyer. Everyone's got a lawyer. So it's super complicated to get deals done and nothing happens fast. So like a quick deal in New York takes like 3 months just to close. Like if you really, I'm just being honest here, like the seller selling for cash in New York doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's going to take like 2 to 3 months no matter what. So like they could have just put their house on the market and that'll take even longer. But like when you say like I buy your house in 8 days, like I can do that in Seattle, no problem. New York, that's practically impossible to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, man.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I want to talk about that, like how to talk to sellers and really specifically like how to talk to sellers in tough markets. So like where it really matters. So a quick icebreaker before we kind of dive into negotiation stuff. What's something crazy you've learned recently? Something really interesting you've come across?
I mean, on the rental side, I've learned that at the end of the day, you have to get people out of properties if they're not paying the rent. And obviously people think like common sense, but I've always been a landlord that's been a very fair guy. I've always done right by my tenants. I've never treated them with disrespect. I have a decent amount of them now. And I've always like looked to make a solution for whatever problem they have. And I've been doing this landlord business for like 5 years now. And I have a tenant right now who's dragging me right through the mud. He's completely kicking the can down the road. He's using the court system. And I was like kind of contemplating like making a deal with him and being like, all right, let me try to get him to stay. But I just realized at the end of the day, like you're running a business and people's personal problems are not yours. And if they're living in your house for free, like, you have no choice if you've given them good options to eventually evict them, and you shouldn't feel bad about it because they're basically stealing from you.
Yeah. Pulling out your heartstrings.
Yeah, like, and I like tried to reason with this guy and he just won't buckle. And I'm like, all right, man, like if that's the way it is, like that's the way it is. I'm not going to say something stupid that can get used against me, but I'm going to proceed with this eviction. And it's been going on for like 5 months, dude. It's ridiculous.
I hear that's super difficult in Washington State too.
Dude. This one's in New York.
Sorry to twist the knife.
Yeah, that was Washington is worse, but New York is like second worse. You got to be so careful out here with tenants, especially in the city of Seattle. Like, it is wild.
That's what I hear, man. That's wild.
Yeah.
So talk to me, man. You said you have a 6-step system to qualify seller leads, but before we kind of break that down, I want to know about like, what's your kind of philosophy? What's your style? What's your approach to talking to sellers? Because everyone has their own cup of tea, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the first thing I'll say before I get into that is you got to think about what's going on in the seller's mind. And they're calling a stranger up, even if they see their website, still like they don't know them that well, most likely. And they have a lot of skepticism in their head to begin with. So you're dealing with someone who potentially has a big issue on their hands that's pretty nervous about talking to you because, and the transaction's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you got a very nervous person who has a lot of questions that they need to get answered. And I see a lot of people treat these people like it's a boiler room and you're just like locking deals up. And it's like, that doesn't really work, at least in my areas. So you have to, number one, think about what the seller's going through from a psychology standpoint. And number two, you want to be very consultative with people and actually share real value with them and listen to them and then explain how what you're doing, if it's a fit, can actually benefit them. That's how you build trust and get them to not call your competition. But at the same time, you also need to not be a pushover because there's a lot of sellers who will want to, basically like stay on the phone with you for 3 hours and waste your time and tell you they're selling to you and then call your competitors up and then you're toast. So you have to build enough trust to earn the right to get a commitment out of the seller because there's a lot of investors that do like, they'll just hard close them and it won't work out, or they'll be like their best friend and they'll never get business. So you have to be really good at like learning how to do both, but not seeming like pushy.
Interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Are you a hybrid? Do you have an agent license or just?
No, I just have I just flip. I don't have a license. No one on my team has a license. So all our listings, well, we do a lot of novations too. So like that helps a lot. But if it's like a straight retail deal we can't do anything with, we'll just pass it on to someone and we'll, take the marketing fee or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. So kind of walk me through, you've kind of piqued my curiosity with this 6-step system. What is this? Yeah.
So the way I found out with this is like, this was like 3 years ago. I was like, I think I had one person working with me. Maybe it was like one person. I think I might've been a solopreneur, but we were like struggling. And I was like, what's going on? Like we're getting all these leads. Like what, these people aren't selling, like something's weird, making all these offers. It was super weird. And I went back and looked at all the deals that closed, like the last 20 deals or something. And I was like, what are the commonalities that these people have had that led to us buying their house? Like there's got to be some sort of common pattern. And I found 6 things. And these are how we qualify sellers now. So if you're doing a deal, most likely the seller has 3, if not more of these things. And I'll list them out. They have a real why for selling the house. Like, it's not like, oh, make me an offer. If it's good, I'll sell. Like, that's not a why. Like, I'm selling because I'm moving to Georgia is like a why, or I inherited the property. They have an actual reason to sell. Yeah. Number 2 is their timelines within 6 months. That could be 6 months. That could be next week. Number 3 is the property's vacant. Number 4, the house needs some work or, it needs updates. Doesn't need to be falling over, but it could use some work. It's not turnkey. Number 5 is their asking price is less than Zillow, right? That's something like in my market where like, if they're asking less than Zillow off the bat, that's a good sign because people know what their houses are worth. It's like they know what their houses are worth. And the 6th one, I have the spreadsheet. I have to tell you that I forget this. I think it's I forget the 6th one, but it's basically something else that has to do with the deals.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
What are some of the questions you use to kind of work your way through this?
So a seller calls in and like my lead manager will, first of all, will just kind of introduce himself, let them know what's going to happen on the phone call. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to have questions for you. It's probably going to take 15 minutes. And if you have that time, we'd love to speak. If not, we can talk another time because we want to have a meaningful call with the seller. And he'll first of all start out with like a low impact question. Like, why are you selling the house could get someone's guard up depending on where they came from. But hey, how's the condition of the property is like a very like reasonable ask because if you're going to pay several $100,000 for a house, you want to know what the condition's like. So that question gets asked to number 1, assess the condition and get the seller to start talking. And then when the seller starts talking about the condition and, all that stuff, then the next question usually is, oh, wow, that seems like a nice house, or it seems like you've been there for a while. We're complimenting the situation. And then we're asking, oh, why would you want to consider selling now? And then we're getting the reason out after that. So basically it like kills 2 birds with 1 stone.
Nice. Okay. What's after that? Walk me through the whole deal, man.
We find out what's the conditions like, and then we figure out why they're selling. And then we go into like, why are you listing the house with a realtor? Like that's like a huge deal killer for us, is like a lot of people are going to list their house. So then we'll be like, okay, like, thanks for sharing, the information. And another thing, I'm kind of rambling here, is whatever they tell us, we repeat back to them what they said. So we make sure we're on the same page, because we want to make sure we have all the right information. So, okay, so the house needs like $50K worth of work. It's super outdated. We need new kitchen, new bathrooms, new floors, new roof, whatever. Just want to make sure that's what the house needs, right? And then they're going to confirm, yes, that's what it needs. Okay, cool. And then at that point, we go into the reason, how come you want to sell the house? How long you've been thinking about selling? And then we get into their reason and their time frame. And now at that point, before we get into the other stuff I'll talk about, we know why they're selling, we know what the conditions like, and we know their timeline. And a lot of the motivated people are like, I want to sell within like the next month. I want to get out of here, or it's vacant. I'll sell it whenever. So we know all these three things now, and there's always three more to cover, obviously. And then at that point, we start talking about like the things that will kill the deal. Are you shopping it around? Are there other buyers? Why are you listing the house? How come you're not calling a realtor up? Like, I love asking that question. And a lot of new investors get like freaked out about that. I'm like, you want to know the truth on a sales call. You don't want to like guess. So it's like, hey, Bob, like, how come you want to call cash buyer? Like, what's the reason you're calling us versus just listing it? And we're like kind of like nonchalant about it, because it's true. Like, we want to know, like, why are you on the phone with us and not a realtor? Because 95% of houses get sold with realtors. And then at that point, oh, that's the sixth thing, by the way. That was the sixth thing. They know they can get more if they list it, but they don't want to. That's the sixth box. That was my favorite one too. I was like, kind of memorizing all this. So we'll ask them like, how come you don't want to list the house? And then usually what happens is if they tell us an answer that is like, I really don't want to list my house, like there's no way I want to do that. I don't want to have showings. I don't want to like wait a while. Generally, that's a pretty good lead. Generally at that point, if they already disqualified the realtor and it needs work and they have a real reason and their timeline is within 6 months, there's a very high chance that lead, whether we buy it or someone else buys it, is going to go to an investor. So we know that's an opportunity at that point, right? Because if we ask them, why are you selling that? Or why don't you want to list the house? And they're like, oh, well, if your offer stinks, I'm going to just list it with a realtor. I already have someone who came over yesterday. Now we're just making them a lowball offer that they're going to reject and they're going to list it on the market. So that question really pulls a lot of the truth out. And
saves you a bunch of time too.
Oh, totally. And we're able to be honest with them. We get so many sellers who are like, oh my God, thank you so much for being straight up with me, like within 10 minutes, because I called these other companies and like they came over and did this dog and pony show. And like, I wasted like 2 hours of my time. We would never do that. Like, it's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So at that point, we figure out, how come they're not listing it, the condition, all that. We like to ask them what they want for the house. And obviously, as this is going on, like we're like building rapport, we're listening to them. We're not just like sounding like robots, but we're saying like, okay, like if we bought the house and everything worked out and, you got to move to Georgia and we could just completely take it as is with all the stuff inside, if we could do all those things, we're trying to get them to see the benefits we can bring to them before we ask for an offer. We'd say, what's a reasonable number you'd accept? Like, what's a reasonable number? Like, we're not asking them for their best and final. But we're like, hey, what's a fair price? Like, what's a reasonable price, assuming we could, potentially do all these things for you? Mm-hmm. And we want the seller to make it like an offer first, because like they say in negotiations, like the person who speaks first loses, which is not necessarily true. But we want to get a gauge on their like level of reality with the value of the property, because we get a lot of leads too, where they might call in and like they seem super motivated, like, oh my God, it's inherited, it needs work, like they don't live there, but like they want like more than what it's worth. Right.
Yeah.
And they think they can get it from some like private buyer, which would never happen. So the only thing that we got to work on there is we got to get them back to reality and see if we can provide enough value to them to stand out, to get them to potentially take our number that would work for us. Right.
Yeah.
So we definitely like getting the price out of them for sure. And another thing too is if they say a high price, but they're motivated, like we're not going to just throw that lead out, right? Like we're going to take their price with a grain of salt. Sometimes you can get a deal on the spot. If their price is good and everything else checks out, you can just lock it up. But if their price is high, but there's a bunch of other things that could indicate they would sell to an investor, we'll still continue with that lead, and then we'll save price for the end, and then we'll get in and see what's going on.
What do you say when they're like, well, I want you to tell me? And they're like, I don't want to, when they're hiding their cards.
We will not tell them an offer, basically. So we'll basically say like, okay, can you give me a ballpark? Like, can you just give me like a ballpark? Like, so if they say like, why don't you make me an offer? We'll say, well, can you give me a ballpark? And then sometimes they'll say, oh, well, I probably want at least 400, whatever they say. If they say, no, we want an offer from you, I'd say, well, what are your neighbor's houses worth? Like, we'll ask them, what is your neighbor's house worth? And like, we'll try to get them to like say a number, because we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot, because sometimes you can turn a bad deal. You could basically squash a deal if you make an offer too early and they get turned off because they haven't seen what you can actually do to help them. You're speaking with them for 10 minutes. And if they just remember that you lowballed them off the bat, they might just hang up and never call you back. So we're trying to get in the situation where we can be like a consultative sale. Like we want to build the relationship, build the rapport, obviously qualify them so we're not wasting our time. But we don't want to have that entire conversation just be based off price, because then there's a lot of opportunities to go by the wayside. So we'll ask them neighbor's house. And then if they won't tell us the neighbor's house, we've tried 3 different times. We'll say, well, what number would be offensive to you? What would be a number you would not take? And we'll try to get them to lowball themselves. Oh my God, if you guys were offering me 300, I would tell you to go kick rocks. Right. So now we're like, no, what they won't sell for. Okay. So it sounds like you would never sell for 300. And then we're getting them like, it's like a psychology game. Like we're like, okay, you'd never sell for 300. Okay. So now we know what you won't sell for. Now let's go back down the line and figure out how long has this problem been a problem for? And then let's just keep talking about motivation and how we can actually help them. And then we'll go back to the price at the end and we'll kind of peter back and forth. Like, and some of these calls could take like an hour and a half, depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. So how many of the people that call you are just not a good fit?
60% at least. It's
60%.
Probably more, 70%. I mean, depending on what you're doing for marketing, 70%. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like the percentage of people that we can actually help compared to the general population of people who own property is so small. Like if you look at like 100% of houses that are in whatever market, like even like a Phoenix, 5% of them are going to sell to the investors, right? And if there's multiple millions of people in that market, there's a ton of deals, because 5% of 5 million still, like $50,000, whatever that number is, 500,000. Yeah. So there's a big opportunity, but that also means that if you're trying to like buy houses at a discount for cash and you're not doing like listings or creative stuff, you're going after a pretty small group of prospects considering the general, size of the market.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been tempted to like go into other dispos, like you don't do creative stuff or like get a license? No,
I don't really like I'd rather just refer realty business out. I just don't like all the back and forth and the drama and like the buyer's agents crap. Like, cause I'm like, I have listing agents sell my flips and I'm like, dude, just the bullshit with, buyer's agents and the drama. I'm just not interested in that. We will do novations, which helps convert extra deals. But, I wouldn't want to be involved in like a realty business. It's just, there's too much consumer stuff. And it's just, I don't know, not for me, unless it was like in LA or something where you can make like $60,000 commissions or something. But like in New York, you're selling a house for 400 grand, you're making, was that 20,000 divided by 10, so it's like, not really interested in that. But creative wise, I mean, I'll do them if they're like necessary, but that's not the first thing I'm doing. Like the only time we'll buy a deal creatively, like a sub 2 or an owner finance, is if like somehow like sub 2, the seller's going to give us the property because they can't afford it anymore. Like we've done a few of those. And then owner financing, a lot of those deals we've done are, it's like they're stuck on this price. They don't mind financing us because they want that price. And we got some sick terms where like they're doing a 5-year like note with principal only payments. So like every time we pay them, like even though it's their price, we're like paying the principal down. So, that's not our core model, but we can do them if needed.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to talk about novations. I want to talk about kind of what types of marketing you're doing and what's working for you. But are there any other kind of helpful tricks you've learned with sales negotiation, or not tricks, but
I think a lot of it is mental. Like, just don't be afraid to like walk from a deal. I see so many people get so emotionally involved with sellers and they like hold on to every lead, which is important. You got to try, but if you're trying too hard, like the sellers are going to sense that and they're going to be like, oh, this guy's like trying to like way too hard to buy my house. It's like, think about it. Like, they're selling you their house. You're the buyer. Like, you're only going to buy a deal if it makes sense for you. And if they're going to shop your offer to 10 competitors, like, so be it. Yeah. And like, obviously we have ways we get around that. Like, hey, like if you get 3 offers, can you give us the last look to match or beat that offer? And we get deals that way for sure. But you gotta, it's almost like your football. Like, I'm a big fan of the NFL. Like, you're the quarterback. You got to know when the play happens, how do you read that play? Like, we might get a motivated lead in from Carrot that's calling 3 competitors. Like, there's still a good chance we're going to be able to, do that play. What we were trying to hand the ball off, but now we got to throw it. So we know, like, okay, that seller's calling 3 buyers. If we want to get this deal, we either have to bring way more value than the other people, or if they're going to get 3 offers, no matter what, we're going to ask them for the last look, which means that after you get your 3 offers, can you come back to us before you make a decision to give us the opportunity to match or beat that offer because we spoke first or whatever. So we can get deals that way too. Like, it all depends on the seller and like the situation that they're in. So we have many ways we can convert some of these deals that are tougher. But to answer your like last question, you can't be like desperate. Like you have to be willing to walk from deals. If the seller's being unreasonable and like they have a problem, but like, whatever, like their price isn't good or like they just won't trust you, like whatever it is, you got to be willing to walk. You got to be honest with sellers. Like, hey, Mr. Seller, I'd love to buy your house. I can't give you 400 because if I give you 400, you're going to be disappointed in 1 week after I cancel my inspection period because it's not going to make any sense. So if you want 400, I totally understand where you're coming from. Like you got to be empathetic with these people. You should call up Stacy, the realtor, and have her list the house because I can't do what I promise on my website to you if that's the price we're paying for the house. It doesn't make any sense. So I can help you for free. I'll get you a realtor. I'll set you up. I'm not going to make any money on this. But if the deal killer is 400 or bust, unfortunately, I can't help you in this situation, but I'd be happy to pass you on to someone who can. And you lead with value. You don't just like say, oh, sorry, no deal. Like, hey, I can help you, but if you want me to buy your house, it's going to be not this. You got to have a better price. But if you want that price, I'll connect you with someone. I'll make sure they take good care of you. And that goes a long way with people because then they'll remember you even if you don't buy their house. And then maybe they have a friend who's like, oh, crap, I got to sell my, I dealt with this guy, Greg. He never bought my house, but he was really honest with me about that. He was super transparent. Like he didn't try to pressure me. And, we get leads like from other sellers who we didn't buy their houses from because they had such a good experience with us and we didn't even buy their house because we were honest with them.
Yeah. Interesting, man. Do you ever try to talk people out of listening it themselves?
No. Like Fizbo, you mean?
Yeah.
No. We never convince people to not do something. We just ask questions to get them to hopefully realize it's a bad idea. So I'll give you an example. We had a lead that came in from a carrot site actually. And they were like super greedy on the price, motivated, needed to sell, like wanted to sell quickly. But like some knucklehead, like national wholesaler made her some offer that made no sense. Like no way, no way. And I actually called the lady because it was after hours and I'm not here in Washington. So it's like 3 hours earlier. And I was like, listen, I totally understand you want to get 400 for this property, but every other local buyer, including myself, offered you like 300. So what would happen if you thought you were selling your house to, Rick Buys Houses? By the way, that's not their name. I'm just making it up. And then ultimately before the closing, they canceled the contract and you were left high and dry. She's like, oh my God, that would be a disaster. I'm like, and how many times has Rick seen your house? Never. Where's Rick based out of? Texas. So you think that the local guys like me and my buddies who all offered you like 300 when we know the market, you think Rick's going to now pay an extra $100,000 considering he's in Texas? He doesn't even know what's going on. He doesn't know what county this is in. Like what would happen if Rick can't perform? And we're getting the seller to see like, yeah, like these national guys, that's our biggest competition is these national guys. Cause like they don't know the market. They just lock crappy deals up. Like if he doesn't close, you can't get that money to go buy your sister that mobile home. And you got to restart this whole process. You got to sell to another investor, most likely not a national guy because you had a better experience with them. And you're going to get $300,000. Like that's the number. Like that's what every competitor is offering. Like that, like in my market, most guys are going to pay the same price. Like we know the numbers. So if the seller's going to do something that we don't think is going to benefit them, we just ask questions and see what their answers are. Cause she should have said, oh, well, listen, if I go in a contract with Rick and Rick doesn't close, like I'll just start over. No big deal. No problem. Have at it. Like, like we don't force people to do anything. We just ask questions and, we don't convince people. It's like, they got to sell themselves. Like we build enough value by like listening to them and like showing them how we're actually going to help them to where at the end of the day, it's their decision to make, not ours. Like we got enough leads and we're very grateful to have these opportunities. So like, if we can't like get one specific deal done for whatever reason, price usually, we tell the seller the truth, we move on, we get another house. We don't hang on to leads like, they're like scarce.
Yeah. Interesting. How what percentage of contracts do you guys close on?
About 1 in 15 leads closes into a deal. Like 15, net leads, not like gross leads. Like someone who checks like 2 out of those 6 boxes is a net lead in our business. If we get 15 of those net leads, we'll buy 1 house.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
That's a really solid ratio.
I'd like to be a 10. I mean, it's all good, but we're doing it all over the phone. So, it kind of skews the numbers a little bit.
What about actual like signed contracts into deals? I'm asking like, are you guys backing out of any contracts at all? Or
and it's very rare. Like if we have a contract we're going to back out of, we'll disclose that to the seller up front and we'll say like, hey, like we might be able to make this work, but because you're asking an extra $30,000, we need the 7-day inspection period and we have an out in this contract. So because we're going with your number, and this is like, we're not just locking crappy properties up. We're like, we think it might work, but there might be some variables. We'll tell the seller up front, we have 7 days to cancel this for whatever reason, and I don't want to let you down. So if you're comfortable with that, we can go ahead and try our best here. But if we can't find much success, we're going to cancel this agreement. So like, if it's something like that, you know, I'd say probably like 50% of those work out, 50% of those don't work out. But in terms of leads to actual closed deals where we own the house, 15.
That's great, man. Those are both solid. I just ask because I'm curious about the transparency. You hear a lot of people say like, oh, you know, we close 50% of our contracts. Or we close 80%
there's
of our
no way
contracts.
that's possible. So I will get into that because I
not leads. I mean, actual contracts. Like,
contract. I thought you meant leads. I was like 50.
No.
Leads. That's
No
way. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be interesting though.
Yeah. I mean, contract rate, it's interesting because like in terms of like, if we get a property at the right price, we're going to close it 100% of the time. But sometimes we'll get the property at the right price. There's a title issue we can't fix. That's a dead deal. So in terms of like contract price at the right number, we're probably 100. Like we don't back out of deals, especially if it's like a smoking deal. And it's sight unseen. Like I buy a lot of condos sight unseen. If I give the seller my word and I'm closing it, because in New York, you got to put like a serious deposit down, dude, I'm all in. Like I'm not like, I'll put $5,000, $10,000 down, non-refundable, no questions asked. The only time I get my deposit back is if you can't give me clear title. So, you know, we're very serious with that. But if it's like I said earlier, like one of these properties where, you know, they want 400, we could probably maybe wholesale up for 415 just to make some money. Like it's probably ARVs, like, you know, 480, 500, you know, like one of these like tweener deals, you know, we'll totally tell the seller like, hey, we need a 7-day inspection period and we're probably going to wholesale it. And like, if they're cool with that, great. If not, like no big deal. I just had a house in Tacoma. We did that same process. She wanted 225, which sounds cheap, but it was in a bad neighborhood. And we said, listen, if you want that number, we need a 7-day inspection period. We're going to assign this. We're not the end buyer. We're going to make a profit. She's like, oh yeah, I know what wholesaling is. It's like, you don't care if we wholesale your house. We have 7 days to do so. She's like, no, as long as I get 225, we sold it for 245. So it's like, you know, a lot of people are like afraid to tell the seller what they're doing too. Like there was buyers in there. Like she was mad cool. The deal got done, no problems. Like, so I see a lot of wholesalers, like they don't disclose what they're doing. And like a lot of these guys like won't actually, like if they're going to close on it, no matter what, you don't need to tell the seller you're wholesaling it because you're going to buy it either way. But if you're like getting someone under contract and like you're hoping to find a buyer and then you can't find a buyer or whatever, like the buyer bails, like you put these sellers in a really bad position, which is why I think wholesaling will probably be illegal on a federal basis, probably in like 5 years. I think it'll be gone.
Yeah. I think, I would like to see that version go away personally. Like no seller wants to be left high and dry.
Oh my gosh. It's terrible.
It's not good.
They call us up after, like I just got burned by a wholesaler and then we'll buy the house at the right number. It's like, cause it's like a lot of these sellers, like with internet, like with the way information is now, like you can get like 7 offers in your house in like 7 minutes. So they'll just go through all these offers and they'll get all these crazy numbers. These wholesalers are like, they don't know they don't know the market. Like if someone's in like, you know, Georgia, they get a lead in Seattle. Like they don't know what the freaking houses are worth. Like, and if I got a lead in Georgia, I wouldn't know what it's worth either. I'd have no clue. I would like use Zillow, but like, you know, being local gives you I feel like now being
you don't
local,
intimately know the area.
Oh my God. Being local is so freaking powerful now because if you know like 1 to 3 markets max, like the back of your hand, like us, you know, we can make really compelling, intelligent offers that aren't going to back out unless like the seller wants some weird number and we can maybe make it work. But we always just try to be super transparent with people and honest and like, we don't bullshit. And I feel like that's the right way to do this business because there's so many bad actors that just really make everyone else look bad, quite frankly.
Okay. So there's a lot of people going national.
Yes.
Do sellers, the sellers that you talk to, do they know the difference between a national investor and a local, or to them, is it okay? Just another person give me an offer. And also like, how are you positioning yourself against national guys in these conversations?
It's a big threat. It's a big threat from like saturation standpoint. So I've noticed it's a big problem, especially with like online ads. You get these guys national and they're getting leads, you know, all over the country. Usually their seller is going to just go for the highest price, right? And if that's their mentality, like they're going to probably get burned by someone. Listen, there are national guys who know what they're doing. I'm not saying they're all bad. There's national people who have it down to a science. Like for sure, I see wholesale deals in my market. National people, they're selling them. Like you could do it and like do it the right way. But there's a lot of people who just have a national model where they lock everything up and test it out. And it's just a garbage dump. Like the seller's like, oh, I want 400 grand. it's worth like 420. They lock it up for 400, try to wholesale it for like 410. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So usually if the seller is just like going for the highest price and they're like willing to entertain national offers, a lot of the times they're going to do that. There are some people you can kind of convince to, or not convince, get them to see that they're probably going to get, let down, because like, you ask the question again, like, hey, Stacy, you got 3 offers from me and competitor A, competitor B. We're all local here. They're 300 grand. You got Randy buys houses over here offering you 400. He's in Texas. Why do you think Randy can pay more money than us? And then like, oh, did Randy, and especially like New York, it's like, oh, did Randy send you a contract? Yeah. Well, it's illegal. You can't do that. Attorney has to do that. So it's like, it's like not even like, it's like you just can kind of catch them. But, some people will kind of throw that on the, like, maybe if you have 5 leads that are coming in like from national wholesalers, like 3 sellers will probably just go for the highest price. And then 2 of them will probably just go with a local person after you explain to them that they're probably getting hosed.
Yeah. Interesting, man. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me about, I don't know if this is possible, novations real quick.
Yeah.
Or is that a can of worms? But
I see a lot of stuff too with novations where like people make them seem super complicated. It's really not. You're basically just, once again, you have to be transparent, because I see a lot of people lock deals up and they have these weasel clauses in there that says like, seller allows buyer to list on, and like, they don't even tell the seller what they're doing, but they're like, oh, you signed the contract. It's like BS. So it's basically when the seller wants a certain number that you can't pay for it, right? But it's less than what the fair market value is. So like usually in my area, just to give you an example, if it's in Seattle and the ARV is under 500 grand, right? If it's above 500, it's different, but if it's under, which is like rare here. If you can buy the property for 100K below the as is value, you can wholesale the house and make about 40 in profit, 40 to 50 in profit, because you have a lot of excise tax here and stuff. So for example, if I had a house I was buying 400, I can sell for 500. I can give the seller cash offer, close, no problem. Let's say that seller wants like 425 and it's worth 500, but you can't flip that because it is no margin after all the excise tax. You can do a novation, which means that you're promising the seller they're going to get a net 425, like cash in their pocket, basically. And then you're going to hire the real estate agent. And basically all they're responsible for is filling out the seller disclosure. Everything else you do. You hire the agent, you hire, the inspector if you need to. You pay for any repairs if there's like punch list items to get it done. And then at the end of the day, you're going to list the property, not on the seller's behalf because you're not their agent, but you're basically getting it's like a limited power of attorney, basically, or like an attorney in fact, to be able to kind of like represent the seller, not from an agent capacity, because you're actually hiring the agent. And then you're going to list that house for 500. Okay. And then you promise the seller 425, right? So you got 75,000 in the middle, which is not your profit, because you're paying a commission 5 to 6% on 500. You're paying half the excise tax, which in Washington is like, that's about 0.007% if you're splitting it. And then you're going to pay the title policy. So at the end of the day, you'll probably make like 20, 25 grand on a deal that you wouldn't have been able to buy anyway, because the seller is getting their price, but they're giving you the terms you need, which in this case is a novation. So if you're going to do that, you obviously need to know what you're doing and you got to know the market, but you have to tell the seller in advance, like, Stacy, if you really want to work with us, we can give you the number you want, but we need to be able to put the property on the open market for sale. And we're going to basically pre-sell the house and we're going to make money. We're going to sell it for more than what we're giving you. And it's going to be on the market for sale. You're going to see it on Zillow. Are you okay with that? And we tell the seller in advance what it's going to be like. There's probably going to be showings. There's probably going to be 5 or 6 showings. There's going to be, a mortgage involved. So there's going to be a contingency. And if everything works out, which I think it will, because you have to know the market, you're going to get your 425. You're not going to have to fix it, because if there's a problem with the house, I'm going to fix it. You're not paying a realtor. I'm paying the realtor. And at the end of the day, we're going to get to the settlement table and you're going to get 425 and I'm going to make some money. Is that something you'd be open to, or probably not? So you're telling the seller what's going on, because a lot of people are like, well, why wouldn't the seller just list the house themselves? And that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't they do that?
Right. That's
a lot
still
of people don't want to, like, they just don't want to be involved in the process. They want like a white glove service. Like if they know they're getting 425, when you go sell it for freaking 625, they're just like, they want their 425. Obviously, I wouldn't advise you to do that. You should buy the house in that case. But, they just want to be like done with it. Okay, I'm getting 425. Greg said it's going to take 2 months to sell. He's going to take care of all of it. Like there's real value in that, because a lot of the times, like, if you have a really good agent that works for you, like we have great agents that work with us, like we know the process of selling houses on the market, like super, super well. So I can plug my team into that system, promise the seller a number, as long as they know what's going on, and we can get the deal done, no problem, right? We get the deal done, no problem. And it's our process. So, not every deal is going to be a novation, but it's a tool where, like, let's say you get 40 leads and you buy, like, you're an average investor, you buy like 1 out of 40, right? Like, which if you're brand new, maybe that's the truth. If you're cold calling, whatever. Now, let's say you know how to do novations, like you can get an extra deal out of that. Now you're 2 out of 40, 1 out of 20, right? So it's just a tool in your tool belt. I wouldn't build a business off of it because I think it could be something that could get regulated, honestly, because it's getting super popular. But it's a great way to help more people and provide more value, honestly. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think you explained that pretty clearly. And I mean, in my head, I was like, why would they not want to list with an agent? And the only answer could be they want to be one step further removed from the process.
Exactly. It's almost like a really rich guy who like doesn't want anything to do with like the design of his big mansion. He's like, hey, bro, my budget's 10 million. Get the damn thing done for 10 million. And that's all I want to know. I don't want to be involved in any of it. It's like the same thing, but with the seller. Yeah.
Interesting, man. Well, I want to kind of bring it to a wrap here, and then we'll record part 2, which you guys will get to listen to when it comes out in a couple weeks. So teaser. But what's working well for marketing right now? Like 1 in 15 leads to a deal. That's really good. We usually tell people about like 1 in 10 for SEO. Sometimes like 1 in 5, 1 in 8, depending on the market and your SEO. And like 1 in 12, 1 in 15 for PPCs. Like what's working?
Yeah. So this is obviously all average too. Like some months we'll get, 1 out of 20, but some months it'll be like, 1 out of 10. Some months, it all is blended together. I look at the data from 2024 was 1 out of 15 leads was a converted deal. Reason it's so high, in my opinion, is because we're getting a lot of referral deals. So we're getting leads from wholesalers at good prices. We have agents sending us deals. We have previous sellers sending us leads. So we have a lot of warm referrals that come in through our network, which helps us because we have a leg up against that because it's like, all right.
Oh, I mean, 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. So that, and then I take that data and I blend it in together because I look at company leads and I blend everything together. So referrals are huge. Wholesalers, other investors bringing us properties we're, splitting it with or whatever. So that counts as leads in our business. Direct mail has been really profitable for us for a very long time. It's just like something we can always count on to produce an ROI. It's not going to blow your doors off. You're not getting, 20 to 1 anymore. But, if you do direct mail right, you can get 4 to 5x return on ad spend, which is great. If you're spending, 15, 20 grand a month, you can do really well. So, and you get a lot of juicy deals from that because people hang on to their postcard and they call you a year later and you're like, I'm glad it.
Oh yeah.
So mail's pretty good for us. We're cold calling, believe it or not.
I want to pause you there. I'm curious about all of it, so we'll break it down. But direct mail, you were giving me some tips before we hit record, talking about what you guys are doing in your postcards.
Oh yeah.
I'm also curious who you guys are using for postcards, if that matters to you or not.
Yeah. So we're using Open Letter Marketing for postcards. I've been using that vendor forever. They're awesome. Like they got great products. That's easy software to use. So I got nothing but great things to say about those guys. We've been using them for we spend tens of thousands a month with that vendor. That's the only vendor we spend like tens of thousands a month because we believe in that product and it works well for us. So that's who we're using from a vendor standpoint. From the postcard, I'm glad you brought that up. So direct mail has gotten really competitive, right? Super, super saturated. A lot of people doing it. It still works, obviously. But if you're not given, in my opinion, and people have different schools of thought on this, but I've just looked at the data. If you don't give the seller at least 2, if not 3 ways to respond to you, you're pissing money out the door with the cards and the letters, because some sellers, they're going to get your message, which is a letter, postcard. And if you just have a phone number on there, maybe they're afraid of the phone. Maybe they're in such a hairy situation that they're embarrassed to speak on the phone with somebody. But if you put your website, they can go to your website, fill out a form, and then you could, communicate with them on email or whatever, reach out to them when they're ready. Or we put our email on there. So some people just want to email. They don't want to freaking call. They don't want to text. They want to just send an email and that's it. So on our letters and postcards, we put a phone number, obviously, that's tracked to the list. We put an email address and we put a website. So we notice every time we drop mail, our website traffic spikes up because people are going to our site. They're seeing what's going on. They're able to tie a postcard to a company and they're able to see what's going on. Who are these people? So when they call in or, if they fill out a form, they already know a little bit about what's going on. Then it's not just some blind postcard where they're calling a, 866 number and it's a scam. So I'm a big believer. You want to have multiple ways for the sellers to respond if you're mailing.
Yeah. And you had maybe you mentioned this and I didn't hear it. Do you put your email on there?
Yeah. You want to put an email for sure. Because then we get, like I said, I was telling you earlier, we got a deal that we're closing on in a couple of weeks and the lady emailed us. I'm thinking like, well,
awesome.
if she didn't have our email, would she have called? You never know. You could always survey them after. But I remember the first ever rental property I bought. This is a funny story. This lady mailed me back. So she mailed back. And then on the piece of mail, it said, email me. And then I didn't even see, I never see the mail usually. I happened to be back for something in New York. And I'm like, that's weird. I hit her like 2 months later. I get back to her. She's like, yeah, like all through email. I want to sell my property. There's tenants inside. Like, take it off my hands. And I like did a deal down the street. And I was like, okay, we did the whole deal through email. I think we had.
You're like, is this a scam?
Yeah, it was all done through. I mean, there was one phone call, I think, to confirm a few things, but like the whole thing was done over email and sight unseen deal. Like, and like, you know, the number she gave me a sick price on this thing. So I gave her 100% certainty. I'm like, I don't care if you have like the worst tenants to ever live in Middletown. She kind of did. I'll take it. No problem. And it was a sight unseen deal and she didn't have to worry about it. So I've always tell sellers too, like, if you give us a better price, you're going to have way more certainty. Like if you have like this weird asking price, like we might be able to help you, but we're going to need contingencies and this and that. We're going to disclose that to you. But like if a seller's like, hey, like I know you guys got to make money. I know, you know, how this works. You know, let's come up with a fair price that you guys are 100% cool on. Like if we get a good number, like we're going to stand by that. We're not going to like try to renegotiate them again or like do some crazy inspections. Like, so just sellers got to know, like, if you're willing to sell at a fair price, like you're going to get 100% certainty. But a lot of these sellers are super greedy and they want more money and then they get less certainty and they end up getting burned.
Interesting, man. Interesting. That's so funny. She mailed you back. And
she sent me a piece of mail. It was a letter. Yeah. To my parents' house.
Did you not put your email on postcards?
This was in 2020. This was like super long ago. So I didn't do that yet. No, I just started doing that like 2 years ago with the email stuff.
You're like, this is the best tip. Okay.
Oh, dude. I'm just thinking now, I'm like, yeah, if she mailed me, like how many other rentals would I have if I checked my mail more often in New York where I don't even live?
Oh my gosh. That's funny. That's funny. Well, we talked about QR codes. So you have to test out putting QR code on your mailers and let me know how that works out.
Yeah,
I've heard from more investors that works. I've also heard from a couple people, they don't want them going to their website, which I think is funny. It's interesting.
Yeah. I hear people, I disagree with that. I think that's just like, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, if you're like a hardcore direct mail practitioner, you know how low the response rates are. And your goal is to get as many responses as possible. Like if let's say, like, for example, let's say if you do a campaign and you get 10 calls, okay?
Yeah.
And that leads to like 3 opportunities, which is probably realistic. If you put your email and your website, let's say you got 20 inquiries, right? Not calls because they're emailing you or going to your website. You just doubled your chances of opportunity, right? So it's like, so your cost per lead would be in half basically because you just doubled it. So people complain, oh my God, I got $1,000 a lead mail. So if you put some more stuff on there and like get creative with a piece, you might be able to cut that down in half. So, you know, back in the day, man, like just to give you some context, in 2019, like this is not BS, by the way. You're gonna fall over when you hear this. In New York in 2019, like right in the beginning of that year, so 18 going to 19, I was sending like 1,500 to 2,000 postcards a month and getting like 1 to 2 deals from it. I shit you not. I had like a 25x return. I thought I was the smartest marketer ever. Nobody was doing it. It was not saturated. No software existed. Cold calling didn't exist. It was like, dude, it was like printing money. And then obviously over the years, it's gotten way harder. But even before that, dude, back in like 2012, when guys were like some guys that I know that have been in it forever, dude, it was like 500 postcards get you a deal. It was like insane.
Yeah. That is wild, man. That is so wild.
Response rates were 5 to 10%. Like people are like, oh my God, this person mailed me. They're interested in my house. Now they're getting 25 postcards a week. So it's kind of like a lottery, you know?
Are you sending branded or unbranded? Because that's part of that debate on like, oh, do you want them to go to your website or you not? Like some guys will just do white letter, yellow letter, or some are like full blown.
We put our company on there. You know, we don't put like a logo every time. It depends on the mail piece, but like our best performing piece is like this little sunset postcard, right? So it's like kind of like an ugly postcard. I think it looks cool and it works really well. It gets a lot of calls, but we always put on there like velocityhousebuyers.com, Greg at velocityhousebuyers.com. So we put our brand out there. Because like I said, if you don't do that, you're just relying on that UTM tracking number. Like sometimes the response rate's like 0.008 or a quarter of a percent, whatever that number is, like 0.0025, which is like terrible. You know, it's crazy.
That's wild, man. Okay, so you said you're still doing cold calling. You said surprisingly. I'm surprised when
Yeah,
people tell me I'm still
it's
cold
hit or
calling.
miss. Like, I think I look at cold calling as an insurance policy on my direct mail. It sounds funny
Mm,
because I look at the
yeah.
cost, I assess the cost. So the cost of cold calling for us is $1,500 a month of labor. We
Okay.
outsource it to a call center called callgeeks.com. And then the data we already own. We own all the data. We have all the phone numbers. Like we have all that, right? Because we need to for mailing and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I can have this data set that I'm mailing to, which works, but then I can also buy a $1,500 a month insurance, which is the 10th of what it costs. We mail about 15 to 20,000 a month. So for a 10th of the mail, I can buy an insurance policy on this data and we can have callers generate more leads because we never know. Maybe one seller doesn't get the mail or they don't like mail, but then they get a call out of the blue and it's the right time. So I'm like, we don't rely on it for a lot of like consistent deals, but we always get like 1 or 2 deals a quarter that are solid from cold calling that didn't respond to the mail. It's like an insurance policy. That's how I look at cold calling.
Yeah.
It's like buying a policy on your data.
Yeah. 1,500 a month. That's pretty cheap.
Cheap. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, how do you go wrong with this? If you're spending 15, why would you? It's like if you have a multi-million-dollar mansion in Bellevue, Washington, you're going to want to get a good insurance policy on it because if something happens, your insurance policy is $4,000 a year. Your house is worth $4 million. Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. Like we got a deal right now. This is like real stuff. $250K purchase, $10,000 worth of work. We're selling it for $435 from a cold call.
Wow. Holy cow.
So it's like, you never know. That doesn't happen often, right? I can't say, oh, we did that every week. Like buy my course. Like, no, but like we get deals sometimes like that from cold calling and it keeps me like, all right, like obviously this is paid for cold calling for the next like 3 years. So
yeah,
it's totally worth it.
That's wild. You guys doing any PPC or any paid ads?
We're getting back into that. We were doing it hardcore like 2 years ago. We had like a 4 or 5 to 1 return on spend. It was pretty good. Didn't know what I was doing, but then last year we broke even. We were midway to the year. I was looking at our financials and I'm like, yo, we're freaking working for free here, which is really a loss with overhead. So I said, cut this out right now. We're getting out of this. This is paid traffic. We're cutting that out. I'm going to get back into that now. And I'm actually going to hire a coach and I'm going to pay him a lot of money to teach me how to do it in house because I've always been interested in it. But it's something where like you really need to know what you're doing in order to run a good campaign. So I'm gonna hire a coach to teach me how to do it. Because it's important.
Yeah. Do you know who you're gonna hire? Do you want to share or no? Still undecided.
Yeah, I'm gonna hire this guy on Facebook. I'll put it that way. He's on Facebook. He's not like some guru, like he puts posts out, but I think his name is what's his name? We're gonna get him all these leads right now. He's gonna freak out. Let me see his name. His name is Josh Dyrett. You know that guy?
Josh Dyrett. No, I haven't heard the name. Yeah. I was just curious. I always like to know where people are going for their.
Yeah. Well, he teaches YouTube ads too. So he teaches PPC search, YouTube ads. And I'm like, all right. Like, and he was talking about some YouTube stuff. And I'm like, damn, if we can get the overall digital ecosystem dialed in, like if I can hire this guy and he can teach me everything he knows about search and YouTube ads, I'm like, that seems like a pretty good investment. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yep. Well, sorry, Josh. If you didn't want leads, you might get some leads.
Yeah. Hey, where's my affiliate link, Josh? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I'd imagine that. Have you seen costs for PPC go up in the last few years in those markets?
Through the roof. Yeah, it's gotten the thing with PPC, and I'll go back to these national guys, is they know what they're doing. Like you're bidding on 70 counties, 100 counties, maybe the whole country. And you're able to get into these hot markets sometimes when guys blow their budget for the day. You step right in. You could pick up a lead in Seattle for, $50 or whatever if everyone blew their budget out. So most of the leads you're going to get are going to be like crappy, like middle of nowhere because no one's bidding there. But when guys blow their budgets, kind of like pay per lead, like everyone blows their budget, the leads get cheaper. So I've seen the PPC costs go up if you're in a local market for sure, because there's only so many searches in like a certain zip code or county.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot more. It's still profitable though, but yeah.
You can know it's super. I just paid a wholesaler $116,000 on assignment fees. So clearly he's didn't cost him that much to get the deal. So yeah, you got to I think with PPCs, I personally love marketing. That's what I'm good at. And I'm very interested to learn PPC and become an absolute black belt. And I feel like I could probably have one of my buddies teach me for free, but I won't take it seriously because I didn't pay for it. But if I give a complete stranger a big fat juicy check, I'm going to be serious about it. You know,
you're on the hook. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be serious because I had a PPC, not like a big box agent, like a buddy I knew who was running my ads for me, and it was good, but it wasn't like his management fee wasn't that expensive, but I was spending a lot, right? But then I was like, all right, like we're just not making money here. I'm going to cut this off for now. But I'm like, okay, if I can spend like a big consulting fee up front and then I can truly run these campaigns profitably, PPC and YouTube, whatever, if even if I'm spending $2,000 a month on a big box agency, I'm going to be able to save that every month. And if you run that times 12, that's an extra 2 or 3 buys you can get just because you have that knowledge that never leaves your brain. You can have that skill forever. So something that's helped me a lot on my journey is like learning good skills that are valuable, like sales and direct mail and all that stuff. The skills you have, they're like yours, like you own them free and clear with no mortgage. And you can always put those skills into use.
And it sounds like you've kind of, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It sounds like you've kind of stacked them one at a time too. Like
very slowly.
You don't seem super squirrely to me. It seems like you've done one thing at a time, mastered it, and then move on.
I'm very careful with that stuff because you can't learn everything at once. And I've tried to do the PP. I bought the PPC courses and I spent the $1,000. I couldn't understand it because it's like PPC is something where you have to be really technical at setting it up and you have to have the right search terms and keywords and negative keywords. And you need to have a coach because you can watch a course and set something up, but you're going to have to, it's so nuanced, but once you learn it, apparently it's like, it's like riding a bike. So I'm like, I'm just going to hire a damn mentor and figure this out. And I'm excited about it. I keep telling the team, we're going all in. We're going all in on this.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Anybody listening, and if you guys want to dive into PPC, we've got a bunch of resources. I think we have a guide, carrot.com/PPC. We'll give you some of those keywords, but you're right, Greg. It's like you need somebody who knows what they're doing, who runs campaigns. Everyone listening, marketplace.carrot.com. We have some PPC vendors we trust because there's a lot of them out there. If you want some vetted ones, go to the marketplace, find the ones that we trust. Last thing I want to ask you before we head into part 2, what do you, you've been a Carrot member for a while.
Yes. 5+ years.
What do you, how often do you check in on your Carrot site? Do you do stuff on there?
Never. Just being honest. I mean, I've paid guys to build it out and I've bought backlinks and didn't get a lot of traction, spent a lot of money. But I didn't take it seriously and I didn't know that well. So I don't pay a lot of attention to my website, honestly. And that's something I could be doing a better job at. Our website it ranks decent in our market because we've been around for so long. And it looks good enough to get leads. Like we definitely get leads from it. But, I have friends who have outranked me and they've been in the business for like less time than me because they put more effort into it. But that's something where it's like, the day I decide to become a black belt in SEO, it's like, I'll make the decision and I'll probably actually outsource that because, that's a long game. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But, our website's always done really well for us. We've gotten countless deals where like they came to our site, they liked us the best, we've been around the longest, and it's gotten us a lot of deals and it helps us so much for credibility. Like, if you go like type in sell my house fast, Goshen, New York or whatever, we're number one because we've been there forever, right? But I love Carrot. I love the back. I just love everything you guys have going on with the brand and everything, and that's why I've been a customer for 5 years.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing the right things too. It's like you're using it as the hub for your other marketing.
Yes, exactly.
Sending your marketing to it. You're using it to convert and warm up leads.
Yes, exactly. I just never really took SEO that seriously, which is my fault. And, I think if I were to start over, I would definitely pay a lot more attention to that for sure.
Well, it's interesting. The thing you have going for you, there's 2 interesting things you said. One, you rank for some of these terms like sell my house fast, Goshen, New York, because you guys have been there a while. Yeah. You've been there a while, so you have some domain authority, but also you're doing all this direct mail, cold calling. Yeah. So people are Googling you.
Yes.
And like, we know when people are Googling you, that creates more demand and that helps your rankings go up. So your offline marketing helps your online marketing. It all kind of works together.
It all goes in together. Exactly.
Yeah. The other interesting thing you said was like, you got buddies that are outranking you. Yeah. So like, I love to hear you say that because people are like, oh, I can, guys been in my market 10 years. I'm never going to be able to outrank. Well, you can.
That's not true. If you know what you're doing with SEO, you can literally like within like a year, you can be doing damage, even in Seattle. Seriously. Like it's not as crazy. Like I know a little bit about it. Like if you take it seriously and really know what you're doing, because there's a lot more like SEO stuff. It's like a little more complicated. PPC is more like technical setups and like return on ad spend. Like SEO is more of like backlinks and the content and relevancy and the page stuff. Yeah, you can, if I know, so I'm sure you know this person. I'm not going to say their name just for the, privacy of them. They're in Los Angeles, California. They got started in the business maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and LA has always been competitive, and they rank number 1 in LA.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're talking about being in this business for a long time, like what is a couple years? What is 6 months? What is a couple years?
Yeah, exactly. It's like dog years anyway. Everything changes so fast. But online marketing is powerful. In the website, like I tell people, like even if you're starting out, you should get a carrot site, because if you're brand new and you're trying to get a deal and you're competing against someone and you don't have a website and they have a website, they might want to work with you. But if you don't have a website, they're like, who are you? Right. But if you could say, go to 123housebuyers.com and they see your website, that website could be the reason you get a deal that's $50,000 in profit.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like nothing. It's like an insurance policy.
How much? So as an insurance policy, how much money do you think you would have lost over the years without a carrot site?
Oh man, hundreds of thousands. We made hundreds of thousands from it. And we've had our website just, be like a credibility piece that we could use to basically get more deals. So, I mean, I don't have a specific dollar amount. I'd say hundreds of thousands. If we didn't have a site, it was just like Greg and Brett going out there, like doing deals, like, it would, hundreds of thousands. Cause like we go off our brand, like we're not afraid to put it out there. And some people are like, oh, like you should put your website out there because they're going to smash you on GMB. It's like, if someone gets pissed off, they leave you a bad review because you mailed them. Like number one, it's somewhat defamation. Number two, if you never did anything with them. And number two, it's like, you could just dispute the review. It's like, this person never did business with me. I took them off the list. Like, you don't have to worry about that. So I think now too, and I know we're on a rabbit hole, but like, it's good that there's GMB, because if you do shitty stuff in business and it's true, you're going to get exposed.
Right.
We've had, you should. Yeah, you should. If you like totally hose a seller, you should be punished for that. Like we had a lady one time. Actually, I had this happen a few times. We did a deal we didn't do a deal with her. She came in, it was an online lead. She was delusional on price, like lunatic. And we were super cool with her. We gave her a fair price that we were willing to pay. She went online and just roasted us. And I got the review taken down because it was like, hey, she reached out at her own will for an offer. We gave her an offer and she declined it. And we said, that's fine. And we like sent her a realtor to help her. And she was like just some crusty Karen. And she just totally like just roasted us. And I got it taken down. And then I had another lady. She was nuts. I mean, we could do part 3 on crazy sellers. I could talk for 10 hours. It was like, I can't, basically it was like this whole mess of a property. And we did everything we said we were going to do, like everything, and went above and beyond for this lady and gave her an extra $10,000 for the house at the last minute. And she went online and like tried to roast us because she was pissed she had to sell it. And then we were like, yo, like this is defamate. Like you got to take this down. Like this is not true. And then she took it down right away. So, if you do the right thing, you don't have to worry about like bad reviews. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
Oh,
that's
dude,
crazy.
I got so many stories of craziness happening. Like, we'll do a part 3 one day.
Yeah, we will do a part 3. Dude, I guess that'd be technically like what, part 6? Part 7?
Part 7. Yeah, exactly.
Nice, man. Nice. Well, we're going to bring it to a wrap here. I appreciate that, man. It's been a good conversation. If you guys have any questions for Greg or myself, feel free to email me, reach out. I know we covered a lot. If you missed anything, email me, brady@carrot.com. Love to hear your feedback. If you want to check out more of the podcast, subscribe to it, share with a friend. You can check it out at carrot.com/podcast. And if you're listening, check it out on the YouTube channel as well. But yeah, stay tuned for part 2. We're going to be talking about how to raise private money. And we'll see you in the next episode.